So, of course, we've been covering how inadequate the initial government response has been in terms of working people and small businesses to the coronavirus crisis, these one-time checks, unemployment, rather than trying to backstop paychecks so that people could stay attached to their jobs. Much less money going to small businesses than going to large corporations. Now we're seeing, as the machinery of the federal government tries to grind into place in order to even process this inadequate response that they passed, they are running into a lot of trouble, Saagar, to be able to get this done.
Huge amounts of trouble. So the two main things are that we are putting so much stress on an already inadequate system. So, for example, unemployment. There are 50 different unemployment offices in every single state. Every state has different ways on how you apply. You call, you do it on the phone or online, whatever. Show in person. I guess in person's out the window at this point. But people are having to call 50 to 800 times in order to get through. We had one person say that the stress, this is in a Washington Post article by a great reporter, Jeff Stein, he says that the stress of the bureaucracy of that is just as punishing as that from the virus. And I completely could understand that if you lost your livelihood, if you don't have the ability to make money. And at the same time, it's not just unemployment, it's also these small business loans, which is part of the issue, is that the small business loans are not being distributed by the SBA. They just don't have the administrative capacity to do that. And the IRS is currently figuring out how do you cut all these millions of Americans checks. Actually turns out to be very hard to do. So what they did is they partnered with banks. But part of the issue is that these banks with limited amounts of guidance, the banks don't really want to do it. They're basically saying that there are small businesses out there. They Post interviewed one, which went to a bank that is qualified for the loan, applies for the loan, and has said that he will not be taking priority because he doesn't have he's not an existing client at that bank.
He's an existing client. He doesn't have existing loan. He doesn't have
existing loan from that bank, so they don't have. They're like, oh, we can't process. And nowhere in the legislation says that. And this is part of the issue. What could go wrong
when you leave part of the implementation up to Wall Street? Right. What could go wrong?
And they don't want to do it, by the way, because they're like, well, you'll get your money later from the Fed. And it's one of these things where it's so hard. It's so hard to do this quickly. It's just so hard. And that's why, in general, the easiest way to do it is universality, is give everybody money.
That's right.
It's the only way to do it, really. I mean, it just
cuts out the bureaucracy.
But even with the bureaucracy, as we're seeing right now, one of the things I talked about earlier was this proposal from Senator Josh Hawley about tax rebates. And the reason I like that is because it's the same thing. The government already has this whole infrastructure in place of either paying businesses or taking money away from them. If you just cut the payroll on that and you can give business through existing tax ID numbers, boom, the Fed creates the money, the Treasury can just pump it out after it's been appropriated. That's the exact type of speed that we need here because, look, I love the Paycheck Protection Program. I think it should have been funded more and all of that. And I think some of it is working. There's no chance. Billions of dollars have been given out. But the more stress that we add to people's lives, the worse off.
Yeah, I mean, I spent part of the weekend helping my mom. She has a small business. She actually runs a school nonprofit, and they're eligible, but she's trying to figure out what to do and how to navigate this, and the rules are changing, and the initial application she downloaded then didn't work, and then her bank said they weren't ready to. I mean, it's just incredibly stressful. And on the piece about how they turned that guy away because he didn't have an existing loan product, Bank of America was apparently one of the biggest offenders here. And why would you do that? Well, because if you owe them money already, they want to prioritize you getting in that cash from the federal government so you can pay back your loans to them. I mean, this is all about their own bottom line at their banks, of course, rather than what is actually going to be good for these businesses or what's good for the American public. They're looking out for their own interest. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, the massive strain here was something that we've been watching for and predicting from the beginning, because you have state bureaucracies which are already underfunded, overloaded, even in the best of circumstances, and you add millions and millions of people, right? Record-breaking numbers of people like we have never seen before. 10 million Americans in 2 weeks filing for unemployment. And you just wonder how many more are trying but haven't been able to get through because it's so overburdened and overloaded.
And people need to remember this. A lot of states out there have balanced budget amendments. And cities and states, actually, one of the things that nobody's talking about in D.C., one of the highest priorities needs to be a bailout of cities and states.
Right.
Because think about this. These states are absorbing, think about New York State. How much of their state income is being spent on these medical services, coronavirus task force, all of that? And at the same time, how do they make money? Sales taxes.
Right.
Sales tax is happening now.
Right.
So they have no income, no money. They need to be, so many of these states across the country need to be bailed out. And these are the people who are actually in charge of administrating the unemployment offices in many cases. So it's like you have this perfect storm of events. And again, with Congress having the power of the purse, it's just so unconscionable they're not here. That's one thing that gets me. Every single day, like they should be here or have remote voting, whatever. The cities and the states need money right now.
Right.
All these little things that everybody can agree on, pass them as piecemeal bills. That's how people can get money out the door. And also it'd be a great uplifting moral thing for the American people to see Congress doling out as the requests come in because they have the power of the purse. Roll it in. Roll it out.
Able to adjust and deal with it on an ongoing, real-time kind of basis.
But they want to package everything together so that they can pack in all their pet projects and all these other things. And nobody's out there trying to fix. One thing we could probably know from this, the small business loan program, the Paycheck Protection Program needs more money immediately. That's one of those things that should just be passed. No questions asked.
Right.
And then, but of course, or maybe some rules on the implementation saying that the banks can't do that, that they will have penalties in place if they're prioritizing their own customers.
We learned that this is something they're going to do. Let's come in and fix it.
Right.
Let's change the regs so that we can make sure that that's not happening to people. Yeah, instead they're at home.
They're at home.
Basically indefinitely, right? And at the same time, with the $1,200 cash payments, this is something we've covered from the beginning. In order to get that in any sort of a remotely timely fashion within the next, month, 6 weeks, you have to have your direct deposit information on file with the IRS. If you don't, you're probably not seeing that till August.
Yeah, they said 4 months.
September. This is just way too late for people who are trying to pay rent literally today. Literally, today is the day when a lot of rent will be considered late if it doesn't come in today, and that reality doesn't seem to penetrate.
Yeah, and I saw, a huge amount of small businesses in this country are considering permanent closure, according to the Chamber of Commerce. It's something like, I don't want to say what number I think it is until I have it confirmed, but it's enough that it was a sizable proportion that I was like, whoa. If that happens, it's a dramatic shock.
And we know the big guys are going to be able to ride it out.
Yeah, because they just got the greatest bridge loan in history, whereas there's we need a real bridge loan for these people throughout for an indefinite time period throughout the crisis. People are saying this thing could go to July, August, different peaks, different models are showing different thing. People need certainty from their government that the check will come. If everybody has to stay home to keep everybody else safe, they need to get paid now. There's no question. You can't leave people just twisting in the wind, or they're going to revolt and they're going to go back to work. So it will be massive societal unrest. One of the things we were kicking around this weekend, burglaries are up in New York State. Part of the reason is that there's no cops. A lot of the cops are sick or they have to stay home. But the other problem is that people have uncertainty. Is that people, this is exactly what was happening in the 4 years of the Great Depression. And this country almost crumbled like that. Like, God bless, the fact that FDR came in and all that stuff was able to happen so quickly, because if it hadn't happened, there would have been massive societal collapse here.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep saying it. We need to start having a serious conversation about a federal jobs program, because there is work in our economy that needs to be done, that we need workers for, that can be surged in quickly. And that is a conversation that hasn't even started to occur here. All right, we're going to have more Rising for you after this.